I'm going to take a short little diversion here. This is very often done in trigonometry courses, and so I want to sort of introduce you to it. What we have here are three basic angles, or three special angles. We have the 6 trigonometric functions, and the task here is to fill in the grid so that we have the sine value of 30 degrees. We want the tangent value of 60 degrees. We want the secant value of 45 degrees, and so on. So we have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 18 different values to fill in here. Turns out if you know sine of these three, everything else you can get. Now, or what you can do is know the basic, the special triangles. This is 2, 1, square root 3. This is 30. This is 60. And this is 1, 1, square root of 2. This is 45. You could just read these off the triangles. But there are other ways we know, and this is a nice way to sort of review the pieces of information we now have and the several different ways we now have to be able to determine these values. Sine of theta, sine, we know SOHCAHTOA, sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Sine of 30 degrees is 1/2. Sine of 30 degrees is 1/2. That's like just bedrock. Sine of 30 degrees is 1/2. Sine of 45 degrees is opposite over hypotenuse. That's 1 over the square root of 2. Again, you do not need to change the form. I don't care if you change the form. You do not need to. That's fine if you do, but if you don't, that's fine. And then this is 60 degrees, sine of 60 degrees. From the perspective of 60 degrees, sine is opposite over hypotenuse. That's the square root of 3 over 2. If you have that, well, we could go through each of these and use the opposite over adjacent. But I want to illustrate sort of the power that we have because we know the relationships between these various functions. Okay, number one, if you know the values in the column of in the column of sine of theta, then you know the values in the column of cosecant theta just for free. Because we know the relationship between sine and cosecant is reciprocal. And so all we need to do to find the values of cosecant are to find the reciprocals of sine. So we know this is 2 over 1, or you could simply just write 2. We know this is square root of 2 over 1, or we could just write the square root of 2. And this is 2 divided by square root of 3. And again, you don't need to change the form. So if you know sine, you know secant. I'm sorry, if you know sine, you know cosecant. Well, now we got cosine. Well, you could argue cosine. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. But we also know things like this. We know that sine and cosine are co-functions. Sine and cosine are co-functions. And we know that 30 and 60 are complements. And so we know that if we take sine of 30, that's the same thing as cosine of 60, because these are co-functions, these are complements, and so this must be 1/2 because co-functions of complements. These are co-functions of complements. Co-functions of complements, right? Co-functions of complements. And by a similar token, just like 30 for sine equals 60 for cosine, and similarly, 60 for sine is equal to 30 for cosine. These are co-functions of complements. Or you could just look at the triangle. If I want cosine of 30 degrees, there's 30 degrees. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. Boom, there it is. And then 45 is its own complement. Co-functions of complements. Co-functions of complements. And so 45 is very special because sine and cosine are equal to each other. Sine of 45 and cosine of 45 are equal to each other. And now once we have these, the rest of this, oh look, we have cosine. That means we get secant for free. Just form the reciprocals. So what is secant? Secant is 2 over radical 3. Co-functions of complements. Co-functions of complements. Secant is radical 2 over 1. These are co-functions of complements. And then secant of 60 degrees is 2 over 1, which is the reciprocal or cofunctions of complements. And then tangent, we know tangent. We could get tangent from the triangles. That is certainly acceptable. That is more than acceptable. In fact, that's the way I tend to do it. I tend to just draw this triangle, or at least draw the triangle in my mind, and then pick the values off the triangles. Or we know tangent is sine divided by cosine. Tangent is sine divided by cosine. And so it's 1/2 divide, well, wait, how do you divide by a fraction? Sine divided by cosine. How do you divide by a fraction? You multiply by the reciprocal. The 2's cancel. That's 1 over square root of 3. All right? What is tangent? Tangent is sine divided by cosine, but look, sine and cosine are the same number. Tangent theta is sine theta divided by cosine theta. A number divided by itself is 1. And then tangent, right? Tangent is sine over cosine. And so we have root 3 over 2 multiplied by, and now multiply by the reciprocal, right? Sine divided by cosine, so multiply by the reciprocal, 2 over 1, and we're out. So this is square root of 3 over 1 if you prefer. All right? Once we know tangent, then cotangent is just the reciprocals. So the reciprocal here is square root of 3 over 1 if you prefer. The reciprocal of 1 is 1, and the reciprocal of radical 3 over 1 is 1 over radical 3. Or cofunctions of complements, cofunctions of complements. And so if we know these three values, then we can pick off everything else in the triangle, or everything else in this grid. Or, even more readily, if you have these two pictures at hand, or at mind, then you can read off these triangles the values for any one of these and more, as we're going to see pretty soon. So, knowledge of these triangles, being able to draw this triangle with the correct numbers in the correct spot is just fundamental. All right? One last piece about this bit right here, and then we'll leave this. Tangent. When we do tangent, we have the 1/2 and the radical 3 over 2. We have the 1/2 and the radical 3 over 2. So the key is, here's this bit. Sine of 30 degrees is 1/2. Sine of 30 degrees is 1/2. Sine of 30 degrees is 1/2. That just needs to be so automatic that you have it almost without thinking. Sine of 30 degrees is 1/2. Sine of 30 degrees is 1/2. Now, sine of 30 degrees is 1/2. When we form tangent, it is sine over cosine. I know this radical 3 is going to be somewhere. I know the 2's are going to cancel, so the radical 3 is going to be somewhere. Sine, tangent is sine. The sine numerator is in the numerator. Right? The sine numerator is in the numerator. And here, for 60 degrees, the sine numerator is in the numerator. The sine numerator is in the numerator. And so that's a memory device to help me. That helps me to make sure I'm getting tangent correctly. Of course, the simple thing is just draw the triangle. Tangent of 30 degrees is opposite over adjacent. That's 1 over radical 3, and I'm out. Tangent of 60 degrees is opposite over adjacent. That's radical 3 over 1, and I'm out. Tangent of 45 degrees is 1 over 1, opposite over adjacent. Tangent of 45 degrees is 1, and we're out. If you have these triangles, for my money, this is the best way to go. Because you have these pictures in your mind's eye, you almost have to try to make a mistake. So being able to fill in those function values for the three basic angles is just sort of a fundamental skill. It is a good practice. The assignment might not have it, but this is a good practice. Make yourself this grid and leave it blank, and then see if you can fill it in from scratch. Make this grid blank if you need to, and this is fine. This is more than fine. That's the whole point. In fact, for my money, it's the best way to do it. Draw the triangles. don't look at your notes and draw the triangles. See if you can pull the triangles out of memory. So start with nothing. Just start with the empty grid and nothing. Draw the triangles on your page and then fill the values in. What I would do is fill in these, and then once you have these, there's no worth fiddling with it. Once you have these values, just form reciprocals. I know some instructors that don't even put these 9 on quizzes or exams because it's once you have these are essentially free. So, but my recommendation is make a blank slate, make the function names, the angle values, and all this grid empty. Start with an empty grid, start with an empty sheet. Draw the triangles, fill them in, see if you can make sure and get those correct. That should be just benchmark, fundamental, bedrock understanding of how to work with these functions and these special angles.